Welcome to Understanding Final Fantasy VII using only Final Fantasy VII to explain Final Fantasy VII. That's crystal clear and needs no further explanation, right? But for giggles, what I mean by that is I'm not going to be using dev interviews, reinterpretations based on translations of the original Japanese script, no Crisis Core, no Ultimania, no revelations from the remakes that answer some of my most nagging questions. Not in this video anyway. Some quick notes before we begin. I'm using the PC Steam version, so you may notice some differences from the original PlayStation script. And I'm using some cosmetic/quality of life mods, but nothing that actually affects the script. So there's a planet, right? And it's just called Planet in the game, no special name or anything, but I'm gonna cheat and use the name given to it in other official sources, which is Gaia. Gaia is not a regular old planet like ours, no. It has its own equivalent of blood known as the life stream. The life stream is the essence, the soul, the knowledge, and memories of everything that has ever lived and died. New life is given essence from the life stream, and upon death, that essence then returns to the life stream and the cycle repeats. Along comes the Shinra Electric Company, who discovered that you can condense life stream juice into Mako, and Mako can then be used to generate electricity. So whenever some kid pops a Hot Pocket into the microwave, they're actually cooking up the soul of somebody's grandpa and a little bit of planet blood. The center of Shinra's power is Midgar, a metropolis that is like a double-decker pizza. It's divided into 8 sectors, each on their own plate and powered by a Mako reactor. The top level of Midgar is suspended 50 meters above ground, while the second layer is the slums on the ground level directly below the plates. An environmentalist and anti-Shinra group known as AVALANCHE, and that's full caps, this is serious business, and no, it doesn't stand for anything, forms to fight Shinra. The group is led by Barrett, a man with a gun prosthetic, and it is as cool as it sounds, yes. There's only 4 other known members: Tifa and Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge. The Cetra, also called the Ancients throughout the plot, are a nearly extinct people who were almost wiped out around 2,000 years ago. They're nearly identical to normal humans, but have an ability to communicate with the planet in what they call a planet reading. Mako, as stated earlier, is condensed lifestream, and if you continue to condense Mako, you get Materia. They do occur naturally, though, you know, very slowly. In modern day, Shinra mass produces materia, so they aren't really all that uncommon. Remember how I said the life stream is the collective knowledge and memories of all things that have lived and died? Well, being condensed life stream juice, materia contains a portion of that knowledge. People can use materia, tapping the knowledge, to cast magic or perform techniques. About 30 years before the events of the game, Professor Gast, a Shinra scientist, finds an apparently dead life form in the North Crater. He mistakenly thinks that the life form is a Cetra woman, names her Jenova, and creates what is known as the Jenova Project. The plan looks a little something like this. Use the apparently dead Jenova to mother a new batch of Cetra, which they'd probably call Neo-Cetra. Use Neo-Cetra as human dowsing rods to find the Promised Land. Use the Promised Land as the site for Neo-Midgar. The Promised Land is a fabled place that the Cetra believe is infinitely bountiful and fertile, which must mean that it has a bunch of pent-up lifestream juice. Why did I write it like that? A village called Nibelheim is the site of the Jenova Project. The researchers from Shinra live in Shinra Mansion on the outskirts of the town, while Jenova gets her own glowy blue chamber and fancy test tube sculpture cover thing within the Nibelheim reactor. The Jenova Project leads to the birth of Sephiroth, though not in the way that Sephiroth comes to believe. His parents are in fact a man named Hojo and a woman named Lucretia, both of them scientists participating in the Jenova Project. For reasons that are never given in game, which is quite the storytelling decision, Lucretia agrees to let her husband Hojo experiment on Sephiroth while he's still within her womb. Their son. And when you meet her in-game, you're supposed to feel bad for her? I don't know, I got nothing for you. Professor Guest comes to the realization that Jenova is, in fact, not a Cetra, which, I mean, no duh. And he leaves Shinra. He moves to Icicle Inn, an area in the north, and meets a woman named Ifalna, who is the actual last living Cetra. He interviews her about her people and subsequently learns just what Jenova actually is. 2,000 years ago, the Cetra heard the cries of the planet. Using their planet-reading ability, the Cetra are told by Gaia that something fell from the sky and made a large owie. This something was a meteor, and it is implied that this is how Jenova arrived on the planet in the first place. The meteor struck the Icicle Inn area, creating what is now known as the North Crater. Gaia gathers life stream at the crater to heal itself, which begins to wither the land. So the Cetra also gather at the crater with the goal of cultivating the land. They hope to keep all the living things there, well, living, so that Gaia has the energy it needs to heal itself. But the wound is severe, and despite their best efforts, the land withers and becomes cold, creating a place where the snow never melts. Gaia continues to heal itself slowly and tells the Cetra to vamoose, but before they can leave, Jenova attacks them. And as with everything having to do with Jenova, the exact details are a little murky. Now, we're gonna have to segue into a little section I like to call just what the heck can Jenova do anyway? There's gonna be some bouncing around the plot and timeline, so this may, well, let's be honest, this is going to be confusing, especially if you only know Final Fantasy VII on a casual level, or if you know nothing about it at all, which, hello. But I think knowing what Jenova is capable of helps a lot in understanding just what the hell is going on. And if I say something after the explanation and you don't understand it, I can make fun of you. Just kidding, I'd never make fun of you. You? Maybe. Mind reading. We're told that she can do this during the Nibelheim illusion segment of the game. She can also do this to people who don't possess her cells, which is a requirement for some of her other abilities. Freaky alien ball woman thing that she is, Jenova's preferred method of attack doesn't involve any tentacles or laser beams or anything actually very flashy. No, she goes for the much more subtle and terrifying method of reading thoughts, feelings, and memories so she can manipulate and mentally torture her victims until they break. Infecting life forms with her cells. We're told by Ifalna during her interviews that Jenova infected the Cetra with a virus that caused them to go mad and transformed them into monsters. I think this virus is actually just Jenova infecting people with her cells, and the symptoms are just an outsider's perspective on what she does to them once she's gotten her claws into them. Turning them into monsters, to me, sounds more like a metaphor than something literal. We never see an instance of Jenova or her cells actually turning another life form into a monster. Host Channer? Shut up. We do actually see this happen once. It's kind of an important sequence, too. And I have no idea how I missed it. I went through the plot so many times, I swear. Hojo flat out says that he injected himself with Jenova cells, and then he turns into these. And the madness part really does feel like an outsider's perspective on Jenova's manipulation. One day, someone you know goes from their usual self to being paranoid and confused. Eventually, they snap. How would someone on the outside, or even a victim, if they were able to express what's happening to them, be able to differentiate from a conscious manipulation from an alien being that they might not even know exists at this point, from, say, an intrusive thought that has graduated into full-blown paranoia? Telepathy. We're not told that Jenova can do this, but we do see her do it several times throughout the game. It appears to only work between individuals with Jenova's cells. And this is Jenova's sword. Once she infects someone, she begins to spread doubt, hate, and confusion, breaking down her victim's will. I also believe that it is through a constant cycle of manipulation and breaking of wills that Jenova controls people, rather than her having a specific ability to control people infected with her cells. During the Temple of the Ancients, Cloud's behavior screams mind control. The slow, struggling march, and the fact that he doesn't even distinctly remember what it is that he did. In the North Crater segment, he has a reason for giving Sephiroth the Black Materia. It's not a good reason, but at least he has something to say about it. But in the temple, he just asks why and what did I do, and then he snaps. But I think the Temple of the Ancients is actually a case of Cloud losing his grip on his still faulty identity and slipping back into how he was before the train station. Confused, lost, impressionable. Jenova telling Cloud to wake up is odd if she's capable of mind controlling him, but it makes more sense if you think of it as her telling him to wake up from his false persona and return to his essentially black robe state. Illusions. We aren't specifically told that Jenova can make illusions, but a pretty important sequence relies on her having the ability to make them, like the whole North Crater sequence. This doesn't seem to be something that carries over to those with cells, but it definitely works on people who don't have any. And where there's illusions, there's confusion. Because there is so many things that you can chop up to an illusion if you really wanted to. Some examples. Can Jenova fly, or is she just messing with people's heads? Because if she can fly, why does she bother riding on a cargo ship? Speaking of the cargo ship, is her phasing up through the floor an illusion, or can she just do that? If she could just phase through things, then why does she bust out of her container in the Shinra building instead of just phasing through and piecing out? Are the Jenova boss fights illusions, or can Jenova really mutate parts of herself into something this size within a matter of seconds? Shapeshifting. We're told that Jenova can change her looks and voice during the Nibelheim illusion sequence. If the various forms of Jenova that we see are any indication, she is capable of changing her shape by quite a lot. Sorting out what is illusion and what is certifiably shapeshifting is a nightmare that I spent way too much time nitpicking, only for most of it not to make it into the script. But I did come up with one crackpot theory that I've permitted to stay in the script. So, Sephiroth has this iconic katana called Masamune. Here we can see him and it falling into the bottom of a reactor. And here we can see it left sheathed in this guy's back. And whoa, hey, there it is again. So my theory is, instead of whoops, Debs forgot, or rule of cool, what if the Masamune that we're seeing throughout the game is actually a byproduct of shapeshifting? Jenova can apparently shapeshift non-organic material. That, or the Sephiroth that you chase throughout the game is technically naked. A big portion of the Final Fantasy VII fanbase are perking up now, I bet. And even if you want to go with the clothes are an illusion and not shapeshifting, then the Masamune can just be an organic thing, like a fang, a spine, a stinger, or whatever, and it's just illusion to look like Sephiroth's Masamune. Regeneration. We're never told explicitly that she can regenerate, but I mean, she kind of has to, otherwise not entirely sure what the plan is when she regathers all of her cells. And it seems that people with her cells do get some amount of regeneration, given what Sephiroth looks like in the North Crater. Also, given what Sephiroth looks like in the North Crater, either the regeneration is very slow, or the amount of regeneration he got, because he only has so much of her cells, is very slow. But I mean, if Jenova can regenerate, then why is she still headless when Cloud sees her in the lab? It's been like 5 years. There should be at least like a little Beetlejuice head, though that would immediately just delete all tension in that scene. I mean, I'm all for it, but flight. We're never actually told that she can fly, but Either she does or she makes you think she does, either way. Assuming that she can fly and she's not just messing with your head, we see Jenova do this multiple times, including her first appearance in her Sephiroth body, and her synthesis form is a floaty ball thing. Why Jenova doesn't just fly straight from Midgar to the North Crater, I have no idea. Okay, now we're back to Jenova killing the Cetra. She uses her mind reading and shapeshifting to take on the appearance of Cetra so she can get close to the clans, and then she infects them. Gaia creates weapons, which are large creatures whose goal it is to destroy anything that is deemed harmful to the planet. However, they weren't deployed, as a small number of the surviving Cetra were able to defeat and contain Jenova. Gaia keeps those bad boys sheathed for later, though. Gast and Afauna fall in love from these romantic tales of thousand-year-old extinction of her people, and they have Eris. But less than a month after her birth, Hojo finds them. Gast is killed, Eris and Afauna are taken prisoner, and Hojo acquires Gast's research. Eris and Afauna live in captivity until Eris is age 8. They break free, and Shinra are not into that, so they pursue. Afauna makes it to the train station of the Sector 7 slums and then dies because she didn't put enough points into Constitution at character creation. Elmira is a woman from the Sector 5 slums whose husband is in the army. She's visiting the train station, waiting for him to return home on leave. She finds Afauna in her last moments and is like, well, I'm lonely. I didn't have any kids with my hubby before he left. I'll keep her. Shinra did eventually track Eris down to Elmira's house, but I guess they just decided that as long as she sticks around the city, they don't really care where she lives, and they vamoose. Cloud is born in Nibelheim to unnamed parents. We learn that his father died when Cloud was very young, probably from tragic backstory disease. There were at least 4 other children his age in the village, including his next-door neighbor, Tifa. She and the 3 boys played together a lot, but Cloud wasn't a part of the group. He thought the boys were stupid. The other kids didn't seem to dislike him, though, based on the one scene we see of them all together. It really is just a Cloud problem. Cloud did want to be included, though, so he hung around the fringes and hoped that he'd be invited in. When Tifa's 8 years old, her mother passes away, probably from the same tragic backstory disease that claimed Cloud's dad. Cloud went to visit her, and that was the first day he'd ever been into her room, which we don't see, but we'll take his word for it. Tifa heads into Mount Nebel to find her mother, as there is a superstition that the dead have to cross the mountain. Her 3 friends go with her and gradually ditch, but Cloud sticks with her. She misses her step while walking across this god-awful suspension bridge, and Cloud tries to get to her, but they both end up falling off of the cliff. He, somehow, only scraped his knees, but Tifa fell into a coma for a week. And then there was blame. The village blamed Cloud because why the heck not? He was nearby, and those 3 dweebs that went with her obviously didn't tell anybody what really happened. Cloud blames Cloud because if he were stronger, he could have saved Tifa. Cloud thinks Tifa blames him, and he begins to act out and get into fights. But Tifa doesn't really remember much about that day, so while she seems to accept that the village blames Cloud for what happened, she doesn't act like she really blames him. That or she wrote it off as dumb kids being dumb. Around this time, there's a war going on between Shinra and a country called Wutai. Cloud hears about Sephiroth, a hero of said war. He comes to believe that if he were strong like Sephiroth, then people would have to notice him. Age 13, Cloud asks Tifa to meet him at the water tower in the center of town. He tells her he's leaving for Soldier, an elite military force that worked for Shinra, and to become the best, just like Sephiroth. Tifa asks him to promise her that if he ever becomes famous and she's in a bind, he'll save her, because that's what heroes do. Cloud is blindsided by this request because he figured she wouldn't even show up, and then whoa, there she is. And bam, now she's asking him to make a promise that incidentally feeds his hero obsession perfectly. A couple years before this, a man named Zack Fair leaves his little town of Gongaga to join Soldier, climbing however many ranks there are to first class. Eventually he meets and begins dating Eris. Meanwhile, Tifa began to learn martial arts from a traveling matador. Matador. Meanwhile, Tifa begins to learn martial arts from a traveling matador who happens to know martial arts. I'm kidding, of course, but I mean, look at his cute little cape. Cloud tries out for Soldier, but he doesn't make it in and joins the military instead. He meets and becomes friends with Soldier First Class Zack Fair, living maybe a little bit vicariously. At age 16, Cloud is one of 3 grunts sent with his hero, Sephiroth, and his friend Zack Fair to investigate the Nibelheim reactor, the world's first ever Mako reactor. It started to malfunction and produce monsters, so they're supposed to clear those out, find out why it's broke, and fix it, because apparently they're qualified to fix broken reactors. Tifa hears that there are soldiers coming and waits by the entrance to town, hoping to reunite with Cloud. Cloud spots her at the gates before she spots him, and he hurries off, putting on his helmet and keeping to himself so no one in the village will recognize him. When Tifa sees that neither soldier is Cloud, she runs home devastated, which is lucky for Cloud because Sephiroth starts talking with him about what it's like to be returning to his hometown after all these years, and I don't know if Sephiroth would have caught on to the fact that Cloud was trying to remain anonymous or not. They chew the fat. Sephiroth gives his mother's name as Jenova, who died giving birth to him, and will not give his father's name. To Zack, he mentions that Nibelheim looks weirdly familiar to him for some reason. It isn't confirmed in-game, but this line seems to indicate that Sephiroth was born in, or at least raised part of the time in Nibelheim, which would fit with the fact that the Jenova project was centered in Nibelheim, so presumably Lucretia and Hojo were living here. Cloud does visit with his mother while he's there, who pulls out all the mother tropes. My, look at how you've grown. I bet the girls won't leave you alone. You know, I'm worried about you. There's so many temptations in the city. Are you eating right? You should get a girlfriend, an older one that'll take care of you. The next day, Sephiroth, Zack, Cloud, and an unnamed grunt prepare to head for the reactor. Tifa is the appointed guide, though her father is nervous about her going. Nibelheim's claim to fame is having the first ever Mako reactor, and as mentioned earlier, it was the site of a pretty important project. So that said, who the heck's decision was it to leave this dang old suspension bridge here? If this was the first reactor, why wouldn't somebody budget for a decent bridge? The bridge, having failed to kill Tifa and Cloud when they were 8, attempts to restore its honor and tries again, but this time it claims blood. Nameless Shinra soldier guy is nowhere to be seen after the collapse, and apparently this mission is time sensitive because Sephiroth's like, we have no time to look for him. Rest in peace, buddy. Timed missions are the worst. Cloud stays behind to guard the entrance and watch over Tifa. Zack finds Sephiroth inside, examining a room labeled Jenova, and he makes no mention of that pretty big coinky-dinky. While Sephiroth is investigating the pods in the reactor, which are used to cool and condense Mako, he discovers there's a little something extra in them. Zack peeks into one of the pod's windows and sees this lovely fella. Sephiroth suspects that Hojo put humans into the pods. Normal soldiers are plain old humans exposed to a little bit of Mako, but the humans in the pods have been exposed to, a teeny bit more. Zack latches onto the normal phrase that he used and turns it back around, asking if that means that Sephiroth isn't a normal soldier. And he shouldn't have done that. Instead of being like, no, you dumb Sephiroth loses it, thinking, actually, that might be possible. I mean, after all, ever since he's been young, he's thought he was different, but not like this. Sephiroth isolates himself after this revelation and then goes poof. Zack finds him in Shinra Mansion, but not in a normal room, no. He's in a library in a hidden basement. He's wandering around, reading aloud to himself because why not? But the research in here is the old research, not the new stuff that Gas learned from Ifalna. Thus, Sephiroth believes he is an ancient because his mother was named Jenova, and coincidences are for people who are not going to ascend to godhood via superior genetics. Fast forward, and Zack gets a lecture from Sephiroth about the ancients and humans. Basically, humans are pansy ancients that didn't want to keep wandering in search of the promised land, so they started living off of the cool ancient's couch, as it were. When Jenova attacked, humans survived because, being pansies, they hid while the Cetra fought, and now they're all toast. He tells Zack to buzz off, he's gonna go see his mama. And now the Cetra aren't the only ones who are toast because Sephiroth sets Nibelheim ablaze. I guess he just figured, she could wait a little while I burn down a whole village. And then there was chasing. Tifa's father chases Sephiroth to the reactor. Tifa chases her father to the reactor. Zack chases Sephiroth to the reactor. Tifa's father is killed by Sephiroth outside of the pod chamber. Zack arrives in time to watch Tifa cry over her father's body and then pick up Sephiroth's katana and run into the next room. Why doesn't he try to stop her? Silly Tifa doesn't know that only Sephiroth can use that katana, and he does, slicing her across her chest. Although she describes it as being stabbed later, but either way, it sucks to be Tifa right now. Zack enters and sees Tifa on the ground. Oh no, if only there was somebody here who could have stopped it. He rushes into Jenova's chambers and finds Sephiroth standing in front of the previously mentioned angel-themed sculpture thing. He gives away his advantage by trying to get answers from a dude who just called his entire race freeloading scum and then burned a village to the ground. In a turn that shocks no one, Sephiroth doesn't give a fuck and declares that his mother, Jenova, was supposed to inherit the planet, but filthy humans have taken it from her, and now he's gonna take the planet back for the Cetra. He pulls the sculpture free and reveals Jenova. And again, I don't know how anybody looked at her and thought that was a Cetra. You know, the people who are essentially humans. Meanwhile, Cloud tries to rescue his mother from his burning childhood home, but is unable to and is knocked unconscious in the attempt. He comes to before he gets burned alive and heads to the reactor. He finds Tifa and Zack both out of commission and decides to give killing Sephiroth a whirl. He takes Zack's overcompensatory sword, doesn't try to get answers from a guy who went batso in the course of like 2 whole days, and impales Sephiroth with it. But it turns out Sephiroth can survive massive abdominal damage and blood loss because he tries to leave the reactor and he's carrying Jenova's decapitated head while he's at it. Zack, barely conscious, tells Cloud he needs to kill Sephiroth, and for some reason, and a panic, I guess, Cloud decides he shouldn't go back and get the big sword, and he confronts Sephiroth without it, who gets himself some revenge by impaling Cloud. He lifts Cloud quite a bit up off the ground, and adrenaline is one hell of a drug because Cloud manages to somehow overpower adult-ass Sephiroth using the katana impaling him as leverage to lift Sephiroth off the ground and hurl him into the reactor. Cloud, however, does not handle abdominal damage and blood loss as his former idol and passes out. Tifa's martial arts teacher, Zangen, was in Nibelheim when the incident went down. He was helping the survivors as best as he could, and eventually he made his way to the reactor. He finds Tifa and R.I.P. Random Grunt and spunky black-haired soldier. It was nice meeting you, but I'm taking Tifa and I'm getting the heck out. Zangen uses cure materia on Tifa, and while this sounds like a joke that I wrote into the script, this actually happened, but either in lore, cure materia sucks much worse than it does in the game, or Zangen has poo-poo magic stat, or Sephiroth's sword is like special somehow, because the cure materia works well enough to keep Tifa alive for the long journey from Nibelheim to Midgar, but she has to go on said long journey from Nibelheim to Midgar because she needs more medical attention than the cure materia can provide. By the way, this is all revealed to Tifa later in a letter that Zangen left for Tifa to find in her room, hidden in her piano, which is cute and everything, but the village burned down, so... Cloud and Zack, meanwhile, aren't as lucky. They're found and handed over to Hojo, who then spends the next 5 years experimenting on them within the Shinra mansion. Look, everyone thinks they're dead anyway, right? And I mean, they're probably bound to die anyway, right? So why not do some experimenting? Zack is injected with more Jenova cells, but nothing comes of it. And Cloud is basically put through the process of becoming a soldier, which is a combination of exposure to Mako and injections of Jenova cells. It's not really clear whether or not Cloud was put through the exact process of making a soldier, or if the steps were there, but the numbers were, skewed, because Cloud develops Mako poisoning, which is what happens when humans are exposed to the life stream, or Mako, for too long. The more Mako poisoned a person is, the more unresponsive they become. Cloud's case is so severe that while he appears to be conscious, he's only able to groan in response to people talking to him and can't even walk on his own. Zack breaks free of the tank he's being held in within the hidden library of the Shinra mansion. For some reason, Hojo / the researchers not only kept his Buster Sword, but they left it right next to the tank. So he picks that bad boy up and takes Cloud with him. And apparently they also kept some soldier uniforms on hand, because Zack gives Cloud, well, I guess Zack dresses Cloud in his iconic purpley outfit. A nice, very trusting old man gives the guy with a 9-foot sword and his nearly unresponsive friend a ride in the back of his truck. Zack, realizing that his career with Shinra is kaput, decides that he's going to be a mercenary, and he tells the barely conscious Cloud that they can work together. They're friends, so he's not going to ditch him. With Midgar in the distance, Shinra finally catches up to the pair. Zack tries his best, but is overwhelmed and killed. And I don't know, because bullets are expensive, or because they're huge jerks, Shinra decide to just leave Cloud to die of exposure or thirst. Classy. Luckily for Cloud, he's capable of more than they thought. He crawls over to Zack's body, and he's clearly somewhat lucid at this point, pulling a skyward scream. Somehow, even though he's severely Mako poisoned, Cloud manages to make it to Midgar, to the Sector 7 train station where he collapses in the rain. Tifa recovers from her katana wound and begins a new life in Midgar, living in the slums of Sector 7. She works at, and quite possibly owns, a bar there called Seventh Heaven. She eventually meets Barrett and his daughter Marlene and joins Avalanche. Tifa happens to visit the station the day that Cloud is there. She sees the train attendant talking to a man who can only respond in groans. She decides, why the heck not, and gives it a whirl. Hey bud, look, I know you're sitting in the rain and groaning in pain, but you doing all right? Cloud looks up at her, and this is easy to miss because of the rain, but the white flashes that you see during the scene aren't lightning. They're one of the indications that Jenova's cells are doing their trickery. Cloud didn't make it out of his 5 years of experimentation with only a little case of Mako poisoning. Not only is he essentially missing those 5 years, but his mind is fractured. Wherever there are pieces missing, the cells begin to insert things. The very first flash in the scene occurs when the train attendant is talking to him. Cloud is becoming more lucid at this point. Is he okay? What happened? The second flash is right after he looks up at Tifa when she asks him if he's alright, with 2 more flashes following quickly. During this sequence, Cloud goes from confused to confident and then comes alive at this point. For a bit of clarity, from this point on, I'm going to call the Cloud that we're going to play throughout the game as just Cloud, and other Clouds will get fun little prefixes, such as Young Cloud. Young Cloud recognized Tifa, but at first, Tifa didn't recognize Cloud, because for her, it's been 7 years since she's seen him, while for Cloud, it's been 5 years, and those 5 years, he may or may not have even really been conscious for, so Nibelheim to him might be like a flash. When Tifa says, Cloud, the cells within him read Tifa's mind, memories, and emotions to get an idea of who this Cloud is. The last time Tifa saw Cloud was when he talked with her at the well and told her his dream of joining Soldier and becoming the best there is. So she was almost certainly thinking of that night, and boom! Cloud must be soldier first class then. To fill in gaps, aspects of the first-class soldier that Cloud knew are incorporated based on his memories and perceptions of his friend, Zack. The next flash of light is after Tifa comments that he doesn't look well. She turns away, probably thinking, dude, I can see you holding your head in pain. Why you lie? When she asks Cloud how long it's been since they've seen each other, you know, rhetorically, as one does when talking to someone they haven't spoken to in a while, there's another flash, but this time you can see Tifa hold her head too, and the doggo, who's been hanging out with them this entire time, begins to bark. If it were only Tifa who reacted this way, I would say that this would mean that sometimes getting your mind read by Jenova can hurt. But since the dog is also freaking out, and Cloud doesn't show any inexplicable urge to pee on fire hydrants throughout the game, I think what he's doing here isn't, you know, harshly mind reading, but rather, I think he's screaming. Why? I don't know. My best guess is that young Cloud was in the process of remembering what happened in Nibelheim, and the cells were like, yeah, no, that doesn't fit with our first-class identity. Let's just squish those down into a corner somewhere. One sec. Cloud and Tifa talk some more, and Cloud tells her what he's been up to post-Nibelheim incident and how he's a mercenary now. Tifa realizes during their conversation that he knows things that he should know, and he doesn't know things that he should know. Something is clearly wrong. Even though he says he's fine, she can see how he reacts while they're talking. He holds his head as if he just got sucker punched by a headache, and even screamed in pain. She's afraid something bad might happen if she confronts him about his false memories and behavior. At some point during their conversation, Cloud mentions he's going somewhere far away, and no, I have no idea where that somewhere is or why. And why, yes, I did spend too long trying to figure out if there was an answer to that. So Tifa panics. She doesn't want him to go anywhere, and she thinks if she just had a little more time, she could figure out what to do about his weird memory problem. So she says Avalanche could hire him as a mercenary for an upcoming job. And it's a very questionable job. Accompanied by every member of Avalanche but Tifa, Cloud breaks into one of the 8 reactors that power Midgar. As he gets close to the reactor core, Cloud staggers and hears a voice in his head saying, "Watch out, this isn't just a reactor." As far as I can tell, this was supposed to be a callback to something Cloud heard years before the events of the game, but that dialogue was cut and this just got left behind. We'll touch on this again in a bit. After that jolly spot of eco-terrorism, they regroup in Tifa's bar, 7th Heaven, where Cloud meets Barrett's daughter Marlene and gets into a fight with Barrett that is 99.9% Barrett's fault. Barrett asks Cloud if they fought any soldiers during their bombing mission, but Cloud's like, hell nah, we'd be dead, dude! And that was the proverbial straw. Cloud doesn't poo-poo on Shinra as hard as Barrett does with literally every other breath. That's the source of the fight. Cloud storms out, but Tifa convinces him to stick around with Avalanche, even though he claims not to care about them, Shinra, the whole planet being sucked dry crisis, or anything like that. Tifa reminds Cloud of that promise they made at the well before he left to join Soldier, and Cloud should probably be thinking, yeah, I didn't think that meant helping to commit eco-terrorism when I said you betcha, but he must be a better friend than I am because he decides to stick around. Cloud trades in Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge for Tifa. That's a good upgrade. And goes on another bombing mission. This time, Jesse, the resident bomb maker for Avalanche, included a remote detonator so they can take as long as they want to escape. Which is good, because they have to do this god-awful minigame, and if there was a timer, they'd all be dead because I suck at this so-called minigame. Other than the minigame, everything was going very smoothly for Cloud and his friends. They're on the home stretch when President Shinra, I'm guessing you can figure out what he's the president of, arrives on scene to bad guy gloat about them being caught in his clever trap. He sends this ugly mug to fight them, and he doesn't bother me so much now, but I remember him really freaking me out for some reason when I was little. After the fight, the robot explodes, breaking the section of the bridge that Cloud is standing on, and he plummets into the slums of Sector 5. Friendly reminder that the sectors are 50 meters off of the ground. Cloud crashes through the roof of an abandoned church and somehow survives. Soldiers have got to be durable as hell. Damn. He does at least pass out from the fall, giving us our next occurrence of a voice speaking to Cloud in his head. Over a solid black background, we see the same kind of gray text we saw during the reactor. It reads, "Are you all right? Can you hear me?" Then it says something very telling. Back then, I only got scraped knees. This points to the voice belonging to young Cloud. Way later in the game, young Cloud says a very similar line to this, though he says scarred instead of scraped, which connects these two things together. I bring this up because I've seen a fair amount of people being confused about who this voice is supposed to be. Is there supposed to be multiple? Is it Zach? But these gray text occurrences are all just young Cloud trying to get in contact with the currently acting persona and remind him what happened. Get ready to hear the word Cloud a bunch in like one paragraph. Young Cloud asks if Cloud can get up. Cloud wonders what young Cloud means by back then. But young Cloud tells him not to worry about him and to worry about himself. As Cloud begins to move and regain consciousness, young Cloud is supportive and encouraging, telling him to take it slow. Cloud tries to ask who the voice is, but young Cloud has pieced out of the plot for now. The girl that he meets after waking up thinks that Cloud survived because the roof and flower bed broke his fall, but don't think that's how that works. She introduces herself as Eris, and she's very friendly, opening up to Cloud about having a useless materia that she got from her mother. A man then enters the church, and Eris requests that Cloud be her bodyguard and escort her home, and in repayment she offers to go on a date with him. Told you she was friendly. The man is from the Turks, a specialty group within Shinra. They're supposed to scout for candidates for soldier, but they also do other dirtier work like, kidnapping, because why not? Turks gotta eat. I mean, Cloud literally bombs power plants to get himself some Tifa chow, so who's he to judge? Cloud does as requested and gets Eris safely back to her house. He's introduced to her mother, who asks him to sneak out at night so Eris won't tag along with him. Cloud has no problems with that, and he sneaks out after catching some Z's, but Eris somehow gets ahead of him. I don't know, there must be some sort of secret passage from the second floor of her house to the entrance of Sector 6 or something, because she was sitting on her bed in her room when Cloud left.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
While having a little chat atop a bear slide, Cloud spots Tifa riding in the back of a carriage headed into Sector 6. Eris says that Sector 6 is a scary place, especially for a girl, so they have to find Tifa fast. And thus begins Final Fantasy VII's most notorious segment. Sector 6 is run by a mafia boss named Corneo, who chooses a new bride every night. Even though Eris was the one to warn Cloud that Sector 6 is, not so good for the ladies, she tries to go into Corneo's mansion alone. Thankfully, Cloud stops her. He chews over some ideas of what to do, but unfortunately for Cloud, Eris comes up with a plan first. He needs to disguise himself as a pretty girl so he can go into the mansion with her. So Cloud does some squats to get a nice wig, as one does, and inspires an old dressmaker out of his creative funk so he can have a nice customized dress. He tosses the whole thing on, and they're off to the mansion. They find Tifa in, a basement, where she explains that she's hoping to squeeze Corneo for some information, in a non-sexy way. Corneo picks his bride from a lineup of 3 girls, and hey, would you look at that? Now they have 3 girls. You can influence which girl Corneo picks, but Tifa is chosen by default. And it never quite hit me until I was writing the script, but Cloud gets handed off to a room full of men, and I don't know if that says more about Lady Cloud or about green shirt guy here. Either way, Cloud and Eris join up with Tifa and intimidate Corneo into spilling beans under threat of nutcracking. He reveals that Shinra is going to blow up the pillar that holds up Sector 7, dropping the plate on the slums to wipe out Avalanche. Brief flash sideways to a storytelling ick. After shooing away a naysaying board member who doesn't like the whole kill a ton of people, ruin a ton of lives so they can wipe out like 5 people plan, President Shinra muses out loud to himself that they're going to blame Avalanche for the destruction, while Shinra sends in rescue operations so they can come out looking like saviors. Cloud and the girls rush back to Sector 7 and find Barrett and the rest of Avalanche trying to stop Shinra. Wedge is hurled from the top of this very tall pillar and somehow is still able to utter a few last words to Cloud. Barrett's daughter, Marlene, lives in 7th Heaven with the rest of Avalanche, so while Tifa and Cloud go to help Barrett at the top of the pillar, Tifa asks Eris to go and get the little girl and take her somewhere safe. Fighting their way to the top, they find Biggs and then the bomb maker Jesse, both critically wounded, but like Wedge, they've got just enough strength left to give a few last words to Cloud. Reno, the Turk who was after Eris earlier, activates the emergency plate release system, which I'm struggling to understand what could possibly be useful for, but it's very useful in this case. For the bad guys, anyway. They beat Quack out of Reno, who escapes. Another Turk, Sung, arrives to be a Quack and bad guy gloat. He's kidnapped Eris, and he offhandedly mentions she's the last ancient. Eris tells Tifa, don't worry, she's alright, and gets smacked by Sung for her trouble. Like, calm down, dude. She isn't giving away your master plan. You're doing that well enough on your own. The pillar begins to explode. Cloud and Tifa piggyback bicep ride Barrett as they use a huge crane hook to swing out of Sector 7 in the nick of time. Cloud takes the two of them to Eris's house in Sector 5, where Marlene is found safe and sound. Barrett asks Elmira to take Marlene with her somewhere safe since he thinks the area is dangerous now, but how is he gonna find Marlene if he just has Elmira take her somewhere on her own? You get the choice of busting through the front door or trying to be stealthy. I'll be honest, I don't think I have ever chosen to bust in. Like, if you'd asked me before I replayed the game for this video, I would have said, oh yeah, you have to run up a bunch of stairs to break into the Shinra building. The real reason I bring this up is because I 100% forgot how funny the back and forth banter is during this segment, including such gems as the tireless "Are we there yet?" gag and "Whoa! Tifa!" The party busts into the Shinra lab where they find the head of the science department, Professor Hojo, gushing over future party member Red 13. After Hojo waddles off, Cloud notices a big metal container labeled Jenova. The window glows a bright purple, and who wouldn't want to peek into that? Inside, he finds Jenova's headless body. And I love how Barrett just shuts down this whole dramatic scene. Where is its head? This whole thing's stupid. Let's keep going. On the second floor of the lab, they find Hojo observing Red and Eris, who he's put into the same cell. When the group's like, yo, what? Hojo says they're both going extinct, so he's lending them a helping hand. And I don't think anybody who's played through Final Fantasy VII has ever been able to piece together Hojo's logic here. While they were spying on the meeting between Hojo and the other executives earlier, Hojo did mention wanting to breed Eris, but do I need to explain why that wouldn't work, Hojo? They rescue Eris and Red 13 joins the crew, but they're arrested soon after. Eris is locked up again, and the rest of the party are brought before President Shinra, and he kinda just reveals his plans, because why not? This is another storytelling ick, unfortunately. He reveals the plan that I mentioned earlier, Neo Cetra, Neo Midgar, Neo Money. Cloud and company are locked up, so they've got nothing to do but snooze. When Cloud wakes up during the night, he sees that his cell has been unlocked and the guard has been killed. We don't have enough polygons to prove it, but Red assures us that no human could have done whatever killed the poor guard. They discover that Jenova's container is busted open, and she is nowhere to be found. Following the trail of blood, they find old Prezi dead at his desk, a katana sticking out of his back. Cloud and Tifa recognize the katana as belonging to Sephiroth, a super important Shinra executive named Palmer, who is the head of the Space Department, witnessed the assassination of old Prezi and claims that not only did he see Sephiroth, he heard Sephiroth speak when he claimed he wouldn't let Shinra find the Promised Land. Okay, so now we're at a part that causes a lot of confusion. What you're supposed to believe is happening here throughout the game is that Sephiroth broke into the Shinra building, committed a little massacre, as he's known to do, popped open Mommy's tank, detoured to open Cloud's prison cell, went to the top floor, assassinated President Shinra, and left his precious katana lodged in the man's back. Then he goes on his merry way with Jenova's headless body in one of his pockets, I guess. But what's really happening, which is revealed in not one but two twist reveals, is that Jenova herself busted out of the container and then did all of those other things that I said. That's right, she's a strong, independent, world-eating alien and she doesn't need her son. Now, to keep things clear, well, more clear, I will be referring to the Sephiroth that you encounter up till the Whirlwind Maze as Jenny. The group wonder if that means that Jenny's on their side, but Cloud shuts down the idea immediately. With a suspicious amount of good timing, the president's son, who I would call New Prezi, but he actually has a name, Rufus, arrives to take up his new role as president. The group split into three. Cloud stays to fight Rufus and his dog thing. Turns out, trying to escape from the front door wasn't the best plan because now they're surrounded. And then Cloud and Tifa show up with a plan. Steal a motorcycle and what can only be described as the worst vehicle I have ever seen, which is a three-wheeled utility truck with suicide doors. Did you shut that up? They use yet another crane hook to get to safety, climbing down one to get outside of Midgar. They take a brief rest where Barrett has Cloud fill in everyone who isn't Tifa on what he knows about Sephiroth and the Nibelheim incident. They kidnap a giant chicken to cross a swamp that has an endless supply of danger noodles in it. They get their clue of where to go next because some of the Turks just kind of blurt out that Sephiroth was spotted in the port city of Junon. Classy. Cloud is forced to perform CPR, and a little girl in the most pointless minigame ever becomes the hero of Under Junon, and then the little girl lets him use her dolphin to jump onto a tower and climb into Junon proper. Cloud pretends to be a trooper and learns that Professor Hojo resigned from Shinra for reasons unknown. The group sneaks aboard a ship headed to the western continent and find that Jenny is on board. Kinda. She murders a bunch of the crew and the gang finds her in the cargo hold. She phases up through the floor, mutters something about how, after a long rest, the time is now. She doesn't recognize Cloud and decides not to stick around to get reacquainted. She drops a chunk of Jenova, which morphs into a monster that the group defeats. And then everything is just kinda normal. They dock at a resort town called Costa del Sol without any trouble. They find Professor Hojo just chilling on the beach in his lab coat. And I'm guessing based purely on the power of had a high-ranking position in Shinra, he has 3 beach babes hanging out with him. Hojo says they're both after Sephiroth. Eris tries to ask Hojo if Sephiroth and Jenova really are both ancients, but he just mumbles that they need to head west and then goes back to getting a tan. Yes, that really is the clue for where they need to go next. So the gang head west and eventually find themselves in the Gold Saucer, a giant amusement park. They meet a new party member, Kate Shi, a fortune-telling machine. When he swears that he can also find missing things and people, Cloud asks him to find Jenny. Kate Shi produces some bogus fortunes before spitting out, "What you pursue will be yours, but you will lose something dear." And then he's like, that's an interesting fortune, and it's really gonna bug me not knowing whether it comes true or not, so I'm going with you. And they kind of just let him. Someone goes on a shooting spree in Gold Saucer. A survivor says it was a man with a gun arm. That's kind of a rare prosthetic, so suspicion falls on resident gun arm Barrett. The party is arrested and tossed into Corel prison at the base of Gold Saucer. Barrett finds his old friend, Dine, who also has a gun arm. He has gone nearly completely cuckoo after the Corel incident. See, a couple of years back, the town of Corel took a vote on whether to build a reactor, and everyone, including Barrett, voted yes, while old buddy Dine said no. They built it, and then sometime later, I don't know, hopefully not like within weeks, because that would really suck, the Corel reactor explodes. Shinra doesn't want anybody to know that though, because who'd want a reactor if it could just up and blow like that, right? So they lie, saying it was an act of sabotage by a non-existent rebel group, and they personally wipe out the rest of Corel. Back in the present, Dine just so happened to choose that day of all days to commit his little massacre. The two fight, and Barrett tells Dine that Dine's daughter, Marlene, is still alive and well, but Dine says that she was too little to remember him anyway. He tosses Barrett his wife's memento to give to Marlene, and then tosses himself off of a cliff. Since Dine was the de facto leader of the prison, the memento gives them the cred they need to earn their freedom. How can they earn their freedom, you ask? By forcing Cloud to become a chocobo jockey, of course. Chocobos are those big chickens I mentioned before. Luckily for all, Cloud picks up new skills very quickly. After winning the race, Cloud gets a letter from Dio, the owner of Gold Saucer, who's like, "Hey, sorry for profiling you guys just because you were at the scene of the crime and your friend had a gun arm. My bad. Here's a buggy you can have. Oh, and I heard Sephiroth was headed towards Gungaga. He's popular with young guys like Cloud, right? You should get his autograph." The buggy lets them cross rivers and opens the western side of the continent to them. The first location that they come across is optional. It's Gungaga, Zack's hometown. You can meet his parents who provide context that we already have, so we're Gungaga. The buggy breaks down just outside of Red's hometown, Cosmo Canyon. Red 13's name is revealed to be Nanaki, but we'll continue calling him Red. He says he's going to stay behind because it's his duty to protect the canyon and its people. Red's adoptive grandfather, Bugenhagen, tells the party all about how the livestream works in a nifty cutscene in his planetarium, but I covered all that earlier, so Eris learns some stuff off-screen about the Cetra and gets all sad. Barrett's sad that he won't be able to bring Avalanche to Cosmo Canyon because, you know. Kate Shee kinda just says it's been a while, and Red 13 opens up about his daddy issues, saying his father abandoned his mother while they were protecting the canyon from their enemies, the Gi tribe. We aren't given a lot of info on the Gi tribe. It's ambiguous if the Gi can't join the livestream because of something about them, or if they were particularly vengeful when they died and they refused to go to the livestream. But either way, the Gi that Cloud and his party fight are all their ghosts, and they want to invade Cosmo Canyon, and that's it. Bugenhagen takes Red to a sealed cavern. He says that it leads to the back of the canyon, and the Gi tried to invade through it, but because it was so narrow, they couldn't take advantage of their superior numbers. Natural choke points, baby! After defeating a chunky Gi boss who could be killed with a single X potion, they reach the end of the cave and find the petrified body of Red's father, Seto. He fought all on his lonesome to stop the invasion of the canyon, even as his body succumbed to the poison arrows of the Gi and became petrified. Red forgives his father, and tears fall from the statue, and boy, am I not doing this section emotional justice. Sorry, Red. The buggy gets repaired, Red rejoins the team, and the party arrive in Nibelheim, Cloud and Tifa's hometown that was burned to the ground 5 years ago. Or it should be. Much to their vast confusion, not only is there a town where Nibelheim used to be, it's an exact copy of the Nibelheim that was burned down. They try to figure out what's going on from the villagers, but they all deny anything happened to Nibelheim 5 years ago. But screw those guys, because we can find out all we need to know by going into Tifa's awkwardly well-recreated room and reading this letter somebody just left on a desk. It's a pair of periodic reports to Hojo. The first states that no clones have left Nibelheim, but they seem to be sensing something. All they say is reunion or Sephiroth and show no other signs of activity. The second talks about how Shinra staff are disguised as townspeople. Oh, and they've been working on their acting, how nice. And that there have been 8 visitors to the town this unspecified quarter. However, none of the visitors knew what happened in Nibelheim, and therefore none of them knew that Nibelheim was recreated exactly as it was before the incident. And you may be wondering, can I explain to you how they knew the finer details like the stuff inside the homes? Why, no, I can't, but thanks for asking. And about the clones. It's a misnomer. Around the village, there are people in black robes that all have numbered tattoos on them. These are the so-called clones. But remember back when I talked about the note that Zangan left for Tifa and her piano? In it, Zangan says that Hojo ordered all of the survivors to be gathered up for an experiment. We can safely assume that that experiment would be the same as what happened to Cloud and Zack. The black robes have been injected with Jenova cells and are Mako poisoned. To avoid confusion, I'm just going to call them black robes. In the basement of Shinra Mansion, they find Jenny, who asks if Cloud will be going to the reunion, and hilariously, Cloud replies, "I don't even know what a reunion is." Shinra needs to work on their education system, dang. Jenny says that Jenova will be joining the reunion and become a calamity from the skies, which prompts Cloud to ask, well, does that mean Jenova's not an ancient then? Jenny is not amused by this. Maybe Cloud doesn't have the right to participate after all. But if he wants to, he can follow her north past Mount Nebel. Jenny beans Cloud with the materia and flies off. Do I know why? No, but it is funny. The group passes through Mount Nebel, where they run into a problem. See, Jenny can fly, but presently Cloud is unable to float as per his namesake, so they stop by Rocket Town. A former Shinra employee and future Cloud party member, Sid, acts as the town representative. They pop by Sid's house, but he's not at home at the moment. Being good, respectful people, they, of course, take a peek into the backyard and find a plane called the Teeny Bronco. And hey, you want to know a little secret? Planes can fly. They find Sid doing whatever in the rocket, but they aren't able to get permission from him to take the Teeny Bronco. Rufus arrives, but instead of telling Sid the news he was hoping for, that he's restarting the space program, he instead also asks to borrow the Teeny Bronco. But sucks to be Rufus, because Cloud and his party make off with the Teeny Bronco after they stop Palmer from stealing it. If you're thinking, who the whack's Palmer? Silly. He's the executive who saw Jenny kill the president. Sid hops on the Teeny Bronco as it races past, but the tail is damaged and now it can't really fly. It can still be used as a ship, as long as they stick to the shallows. In his conversation with Sid, Rufus said he was following Jenny to the Temple of the Ancients. So much for follow me north, Cloud. This has got to be like the weakest junction in Final Fantasy VII. The Teeny Bronco gives you new areas to explore, but to progress the story, you have to go back to a previous area, go into a house that is just out in the wilds and was previously empty, to find out that the guy inside sold the key to the Temple of the Ancients to Dio. And Dio must not have paid much for it because he coughs it up after Cloud goes for a round in the Gold Saucer Arena. They decide that they'll head for the Temple of the Ancients in the morning, and the group asks Cloud to clarify what the plot is at this point. But we got this. You go on your date so Kate She can steal the key and hand it over to Shinra, okay? Kate She reveals that not only is he a remote-controlled toy, he's a remote-controlled toy who's piloted by someone that works for Shinra. He tries to just shrug off the whole gave away the key item thing, saying they should just continue as normal, but obviously Cloud and his date are not super into that. He's taken Marlene hostage, so they have no choice but to let him back into the group and to play along. They follow Shinra to the Temple of the Ancients, where Eris listens to a bridge. A black cloak comes out of the temple, mutters something about a black materia, and then ascends? Inside the temple, they find the backhandy Turk, Sung, has been stabbed. He claims that Jenny isn't searching for the Promised Land and hands over the keystone. The inside of the temple looks like some sort of Escher painting. Eris listens to a pool, and they watch a replay of Sung being stabbed by Jenny. Other than showing us what happened to him, which is unnecessary but nice, I'm not really sure what this scene is for, because Jenny's just gonna repeat herself when Cloud gets to the room, so... Inside of the mural room where Sung was stabbed, some weirdness goes down. Cloud calls out to Jenny, who obediently manifests. She reveals her plan to become one with the planet. When the planet is injured, it gathers spirit energy to heal itself, and the bigger the owie, the more energy that it needs. So she's going to use the black materia to summon a meteor and smash it into the planet. She will then merge with the energy the planet is using to heal itself and become a new life form, a god that will rule over every soul. After laying out her plans, Jenny zips off screen while calling for Cloud to wake up. Cloud starts behaving oddly, mirroring some of Jenny's behavior, such as the laughter and the after images of his model. Eris calls out to Cloud. He snaps to and doesn't seem to recognize that he was behaving oddly. Eris decides not to tell him he was being a weirdo, and then just starts talking about Meteor because, I don't know, voices from the temple, I guess. The room is locked, so they investigate the altar. Eris has a chat with the voices and says that the temple is itself the Black Materia. Easy peasy, right? No one can take a whole temple. But for some reason, the temple also has a method to shrink it down into a manageable world-ending size. But you can only shrink the temple while you're in it, so the person doing it will die. Cloud says, well, then they have to find a way to shrink the temple and take it because Jenny is a jerk and she would definitely sacrifice her flunkies to get a hold of the Black Materia. Keiichi volunteers himself as tribute. After all, he's a remote-controlled toy. He can just get another body. They don't trust him because, yeah, he betrayed them literally yesterday, but it's hard to pass up on that kind of opportunity. They really play up the tragedy in the scene for some reason. Are the group not supposed to realize that he's a toy? That he's just gonna get another body? Eris asks Kate to tell a fortune, but not just any fortune. She wants him to tell her how compatible she and Cloud are. He does his little jig and declares that Eris and Cloud are perfect for each other. Oh boy, just call him when the wedding happens. He'll be the preacher. Friendly reminder that Keiichi is being piloted by a Shinra employee that's holding a child hostage. After the shrinkening, Cloud and Eris make their way to the bottom of the crater where the temple used to be and get the Black Materia. Eris says that it can't be used without a lot of spiritual energy, aka the Promised Land, and because Sephiroth isn't actually an ancient, which I guess they just assume to be true because of the scene in the library, or it's just more off-screen Eris knowledge that we don't get to know. Either way, Jenny appears and says not only has she found the Promised Land, but she's superior to the Ancients because she has traveled the life stream, gaining the knowledge and wisdom of the Ancients and those who came after their extinction. Jenny again calls for Cloud to wake up. Cloud collapses and has an out-of-body experience. As he stumbles towards Jenny, his younger self tries to get him to stop, telling him to not be afraid. He hands the Black Materia to Jenny, who flies off again, pleased as punch. Cloud regains control of himself, but this time he remembers he whacked up. Eris is pretty calm about the whole handed the guy who wants to nuke the planet the big red button, and she tries to comfort Cloud, only for him to snap and begin to beat her. The third party member comes to Eris's rescue and knocks Cloud out. He has a vision of Eris in the sleeping forest, which leads to the city of the Ancients. Cloud apologizes for attacking Eris, and she tells him to take care of himself. She's gonna handle Jenny, because only a Cetra can do it. Cloud comes to, and Barret and Tifa tell him that Eris has gone missing and the others are looking for her, and he tells them she's headed for the city of the Ancients because only she can stop Jenny. They're like, sweet, well, let's go and help her out. We can, I don't know, fight Jenny if she shows up or something. But Cloud is not having a great day. He's afraid he'll lose it if he gets near Jenny. Barret goes good cop, bad cop on Cloud while playing both roles himself, and it works! Cloud rejoins the group, and they take the teeny Bronco to the northern continent in pursuit of Eris. And some of you might be wondering, now, wait a minute, how did Eris... And you're right to wonder. The only thing more confusing about how Eris got to the North Continent without the teeny Bronco is how I only just recognized the issue while writing this script. The sleeping forest cannot be crossed while it's sleeping. Duh! To wake it up, you need a lunar harp. Luckily, one is buried in the excavation site right outside of the forest, and the excavation team there is more than willing to dig it up for you and hand it over. Cloud and friends enter the city of the Ancients, but they can't find Eris anywhere, so they decide to take a little snooze. Cloud wakes up in the middle of the night and says he can feel that not only is Eris in the city, but so is Jenny. They find Eris kneeling and praying inside of a giant conch shell. Cloud decides to go and see Eris alone, motioning for the others to hang back. Cloud raises his sword to attack, but he is clearly struggling to stop himself. The voices of his teammates reach him just in time. Eris looks up at him, smiles, and then Jenny scars an entire generation of gamers. She leaps from above and impales Eris, smiling smugly as she removes the katana. Eris's ribbon dramatically unfurls, releasing a materia she had hidden underneath. Remember when Cloud met her and I mentioned she immediately brought up her useless materia? There it is, and there it goes, bouncing off into the waters below the altar. Jenny's like, hell yeah, now all I have to do is go north to the promised land, which awaits me beyond the snowy fields. Hint, hint? Cloud's like, dude, stop giving me plot hints, Aerith is dead. Jenny tells him he should stop pretending like he's got emotions, zips off and hucks a chunk of Jenova while saying, because Cloud, you're... After her battle, Jenova finishes Jenny's sentence and tells Cloud, because you're a puppet. This is one of the 2 twists that I mentioned earlier that is supposed to clue you in that the person that you've been chasing isn't Sephiroth. It is also the only line of dialogue in the game credited to Jenova. Cloud gives Aerith a water burial in the pond in front of the big conch. There are a lot of things about this scene, but it's very touching and it's sad, so we'll let them go. Following Jenny's subtle plot hint, they head north into the Icicle Inn area. Yes, the whole village is named Icicle Inn. They grab a snowboard from a kid who hurt himself using it, nab a map off the wall, and ski their way down the mountain. They somehow don't die from hypothermia, climb their way up some cliffs, and see that they've actually climbed up the side of a crater. At the center of the crater is a geyser of life stream juice. They realize this must be a wound the planet has been trying to heal. They descend into the crater and enter Whirlwind Maze. Remember those guys I mentioned back in Nibelheim? The ones in black cloaks who mutter to themselves? They're here too. I don't know how. The party witnessed some of them intentionally jumping into the crater, while others walk around the pass because they remember that while falling is fun, hitting the ground hurts. Cloud spots an airship in the distance. That's one hell of an eye, dang, and we flash sideways to see that Shinra are here too. Rufus thinks that this must be the promised land because look at all of that life stream juice. Further in the maze, they see Jenny killing some of the black cloaks. And they seem to do that fine enough on their own. I don't know why she's bothering. She poofs and begins to speak to Cloud in his head, saying their purpose is to bring the black materia to their master, Sephiroth. Jenny reappears and tries to replicate her Aerith killing maneuver, but I guess it doesn't work out as well if there's 3 people shoulder to shoulder. Maybe if she got them to stand in a row? They fight another Jenova boss thing, and afterwards, Cloud has a revelation. They haven't been chasing Sephiroth around Gaia. It was Jenova. He promises to explain it to Tifa later. He doesn't. Right now, he just wants to defeat Sephiroth, who's at the heart of the crater. They pick the black materia up off the ground, and after this sequence is over, I have some things to say about this, but we need some more context first. So Tifa's like, well, it'd be pretty stupid to bring it with us while we go to confront Sephiroth, so give it to someone else to hold on to. But the only ones willing to hold on to it are Red 13 or Barret, and we're gonna give it to Red because it's funny. Not like in-world funny, but meta funny. Where is he keeping it? Is he equipping it? As they make their way towards the heart of the crater, they are transported into an illusion of Nibelheim. Cloud is surprisingly level-headed about the whole thing and honestly just seems fed up with Jenny's crap at this point. Cloud tells Tifa that Jenny is going to try and confuse them, but if they know it's an illusion, they're safe. The party sees part of what really happened in Nibelheim, which we already covered in the beginning, so glossing? Jenny doubles down on the you can't have opinions, thoughts, and feelings, you goof. You're a puppet! And Cloud asks why Jenny is even bothering to try this, and she says she wants Cloud to return to his true self. The Cloud that was cool and gave her the nuke black materia. She delights in the idea that Hojo would be pissed if he only knew just how useful Cloud's been. And as literally anybody should at the mention of Hojo's name in the same breath as their own name, Cloud gets riled and wants to know what that freak has to do with him. Jenny says that 5 years ago, Cloud was constructed by the Hogester himself, piece by piece, using the power of Mako, Jenova, and her knowledge. He's a failed black cloak who wasn't even given a number. Tifa is not handling the situation nearly as well as Cloud and keeps telling him not to listen, not to look. Jenny thinks her squirming is funny, because of course she would, and she threatens to show what's in Tifa's heart and make her a not-so-Lockhart. Cloud waves it off and says, sure, sometimes his memories are muddled and he can't always figure out who he is, but no matter what anyone else says, all that matters to him is Tifa's opinion. And if there were ever a time for her to say a diddly squat, it was now. But that would make for a bad game, so she hits him with, no, that's not true, Cloud, and says that she just needs more time. Cloud is again like, psh, nah, Jenny's just talking crazy. I was in Nibelheim 5 years ago. It was my first mission as Soldier First Class, but uh-oh. He can't remember joining Soldier? We see that the Shinra squad have made it into the heart of the crater. They're celebrating that they've found the promised land when a giant eyeball opens behind the wall of Materia. I wouldn't worry about it. Promised land! Woo! Hojo explains the eye likely belongs to a weapon, like the one with the capital W that Ifalna said the planet created to protect itself. We cut back to the rest of the party. Red is thinking aloud about how the black materia is so small, but it could destroy the whole planet when, poof, everyone vanishes and Red is alone in a green whirlwind thing. He starts panicking and then Tifa shows up and the green whirlwind thing goes away. The others are still nowhere to be seen though, but Tifa says that's because they're already up ahead and they need Red's help too. Red hurries towards the heart of the crater. Tifa turns into Sephiroth, Jenny, before disappearing. The rest of the party wake up as we pop back over to Shinra, who are suddenly not so excited about the Promised Land. Promised Land! Boo. Cloud phases into existence and politely asks Shinra to go and leave everything to him. Tifa and the third party member are also in the scene, but no one else can see or hear them. They're forced to watch as Cloud takes the black materia from Red, all while Tifa is begging him to stop. Cloud thanks everyone, and then, looking at each person in turn, he apologizes as well. He even looks straight at Tifa, which suggests that he can at least see her, if not hear her, and it also suggests that Jenny is a huge quack quack. But that's just another straw in the stack. Hojo's like, hell yeah, my theory was right, and my experiment was a success. What's your number? His tattoo number, not his phone number. Cloud says he never got one, and he even begs Hojo to assign him one, but Hojo refuses. Cloud is so depressed by this that he levitates and hangs upside down from the ceiling like a sad bat. Hojo finally explains the whole Jenova reunion thing. Hey Cloud, pay attention up there. I know you don't know what a reunion is. The Jenova reunion was a theory that Hojo had. He believed that you could separate pieces of Jenova, and no matter how far apart those pieces are, they will always reunite eventually. To prove his theory, he slapped Jenova cells into people and waited, assuming that those people would all reunite in Midgar because that's where Jenova's body was kept. But instead, Jenova left Midgar. Hojo concludes that this was all because of Sephiroth. He refused to merge with the Lifestream and he wants to control the Black Cloaks. Up there on the ceiling, Sad Bat agrees with Hojo's take, musing to himself that he wasn't pursuing Sephiroth, he was being summoned by him all along. A cocoon of materia slips down from the ceiling, revealing the remains of Sephiroth's body. Don't worry, all the important bits are still there. The baby blues and the flowing silver mane. The ground begins to quake and Hojo just starts flailing his arms around like an excited toddler. Tifa, who can be seen and heard by everyone now because I guess Jenny got bored of keeping her hidden, is like, are you quack quack stupid? Sephiroth has the black materia. We're all gonna die. Rufus says it's time to evacuate and offers to take the rest of the party with him because he has questions. Okay, sequence concluded. So, why does Jenny decide to take a fight with the party as herself when every other time she's just ripped a chunk of herself off and then hucked it at the party? Because after the battle, you pick up the black materia, which implies that you physically fought and defeated Jenny, not a chunk of Jenova. Also, Jenny says this is the end of this body's usefulness. Why? Why let the party have the black materia back? My best guess is that Jenova wants to psychologically torture and control people. It really slots her materia, if you know what I mean. And hell, maybe it really jockeys Sephiroth's chocobo too. But there is some decent evidence to suggest that Jenova is malevolent and just likes messing with people, because rewinding time by about 2,000 years, if Jenova is this world-eating alien menace that can rip chunks of herself off and they turn into a 20-foot plus tall monster within like a minute, why doesn't she just do that to destroy the Cetra? Or even ignoring that possibility, why not make people idolize her like a god or a high priest or a prophet or a mythological figure? But instead, according to Ithalna, Jenova appears as the Cetra's dead mothers and brothers and shows them specters of their past. She chooses to breed confusion, sadness, anger, and paranoia. So I think the motivation behind the whole black materia thing is that Jenova wants to break Cloud. So she's basically like, yeah, this body is useless, rawr, let's fight, oh no, you killed me, bleh. And she drops the black materia, but really she's just teleported off screen like she did before she ambushed them. And the plan then is, let them think they beat me to give them some hope, drag them into the Nibelheim illusion, break Cloud down, and have him hand Sephiroth the black materia. Cloud sticks his hand in the cocoon, which is apparently not as solid as it looks, and releases the black materia. Seems like Sephiroth uses it immediately because it starts crackling with purple energy. The cocoon falls the rest of the way, which releases a flood of plain old water, I guess. Looks normal to me. The party and Shinra escape on the airship as huge monsters erupt from the crater. As a chunky centaur dragon zooms past, the force rocks the airship, Tifa falls down and she hits her head. Tifa wakes up in a hospital room in Junon. Barrett tells her she's been in a coma for a week. That was one hell of a bonk. There's a barrier around the North Crater, the weapons are on a rampage, and yeah, Sephiroth did that meteor summoning thing we were worried that he'd do. Rufus pops in and says that he figured that Cloud would come to rescue his friends, but he really doesn't explain why he cares. He sentences Barrett and Tifa to death because they've laid the blame on Avalanche, and he figures the peasants will calm down if they see somebody being punished. One of the Shinra executives, Scarlet, locks Tifa in a gas chamber. Kate, she, disguised as one of the reporters filming the public execution, knocks out Scarlet and joins forces with Barrett. Meanwhile, one of the weapons is attacking Junon, and they prepare to hit it with their gigantic cannon. Back to Barrett. They can't open the chamber from the room they're in, so Kate Shi is like, trust me bro, I have an idea, and they make their way to the airstrip. When the guard was leaving the room with Scarlet, a key conveniently fell from his belt. Tifa manages to get it and unlock herself, but the room is still locked. Even though it's capable of firing beams from its mouth, the weapons figured, it ought to get as close as possible. It shoots a beam which cuts a huge hole in the side of Junon. It's preparing another laser when the cannon fires straight into its face, killing it. Luckily for Tifa, the hole that the weapon blasted in Junon includes the chamber that she's in. She must have been bitten by a radioactive spider while she was passed out in the Nibelheim reactor, because she climbs her way down the smooth-ass looking exterior of Junon. Tifa makes it all the way out onto the barrel of the cannon, but while it's better than being gassed to death, there's not really anywhere to go. She gets cornered by Scarlet and then participates in another pointless minigame. A slap fight. Now, the game doesn't tell us this is why, but I'm guessing the reason why Tifa doesn't just beat, rush, somersault, water kick, meteor drive, dolphin blow, meteor strike, final heaven, the crazy who just tried to publicly execute her in a gas chamber, is because she doesn't want to become Swiss cheese. But then again, they don't appear to have any guns? Tifa hears a voice saying, run to the end of the cannon. The airship High Wind appears, and Barrett throws a rope down for her. While they're debating what to do, Red suggests that since there were quakes, then maybe Cloud fell into the depths of the earth, aka the life stream. There are places where the life stream gushes up from cracks in the surface, and he heard about some place like that, but doesn't remember the name. This is a hint for them to go talk to Bugenhagen back in Cosmo Canyon, who points the party to an island in the south called Midgar, which is accessible to them now that they have the airship. Now, that gets you to the right place, but what you specifically have to do once you get there to progress the story is a little silly. You see, you need to talk to this dog. Why? Well, Tifa has had a bad day, okay, and she needs some doggo hugs. I guess it's been about a week now since he washed up here on the shore. Poor pokey-headed young thing. It was really sad, but weird. He was holding this really long sword. Really? Nothing? I don't know. The whole thing feels unlucky to me, but the amazing thing were those weird blue eyes. Wink, wink. The old men point Tifa to the clinic where she finds Cloud suffering from severe mako poisoning. Tifa decides to stay behind with Cloud, and the rest of the party is surprisingly supportive. They head back to the High Wind, and Kate Shi lets them listen in on a Shinra meeting. They learn that Shinra is going to strap a rocket with huge materia and ram the meteor with it, blasting it apart. They don't give a solid reason why they should prevent Shinra from trying this plan. Since Tifa's tagged out, they need a new leader, and it ends up being Sid, because Barrett realizes that he just isn't as cut out to be a leader as he always thought that he was, and Sid's captaining the ship anyway, so same thing basically, congratulations. After some amusing adventures with Sid as the party leader, where they save the huge materia, or not, it's all the same, they return to Midgar to check up on Cloud and Tifa, but they're not the only ones who decide to pay Cloud a visit. The chunky centaur dragon weapon that put Tifa in a coma for a week also stops by. Its presence caused the life stream to begin to act up, resulting in earthquakes. So Sid does the only logical thing and calls the weapon, and it works! It flies down, fights for a while, and then flies off. The quakes don't stop though. Tifa tries to get Cloud to safety, but the ground gives away and the pair fall into the life stream. Floating in a black abyss, Tifa is tormented by accusing voices. She calls out to Cloud, and the next thing she knows, she's in his subconscious. And now Tifa's on a mission. Step 1, be honest with Cloud about what really happened 5 years ago. Step 2, debunk Sephiroth's whole Cloud is just some random dude cosplaying Tifa's childhood friend thing. Tifa admits to Cloud she was afraid what might happen to him if she confronted him about his false memory, but they're probably dead now, so why not be honest about it? Even though Tifa is confident that Cloud is in fact Cloud and not some cosplayer, she realizes that they need a memory that Cloud has about Tifa, which Tifa doesn't remember, because presumably Jenova can only read memories that people remember? Who knows with her anymore? So she encourages Cloud to talk to her about memories that are important to him, such as why he wanted to join Soldier. And he says it was because he was devastated and wanted to be noticed. If he was stronger, someone would have to notice him. Tifa asks, who was he trying to get to notice him? And we all know the answer, right? Barrett. And because she's as dense as he is, Tifa is surprised when he says her. Another version of Cloud appears. He looks like Cloud's younger self, like the one we saw during the finale of the Temple of the Ancients. He shows Tifa a precious memory that he has, the day that Tifa's mother passed away. Well, maybe we shouldn't put it like that. The first time the suspension bridge tried to kill Tifa plays out, and she apologizes about not remembering what happened due to the teeny bit of head trauma that put her in the hospital for a week. But her not remembering it until now is actually really good for them, because that memory is when they were 8, and Sephiroth claimed that Cloud was created only 5 years ago. With this, Cloud not only remembers what really happened in Nibelheim, but he is finally able to accept who he is. Cloud summarizes everything and gets saddled with the worst huge materia of them all. The one in the underwater reactor. Rough hazing ritual, guys. There's only one place on Gaia with a rocket, so the team race to Sid's old stomping grounds. They defeat Shinra, and everything seems like it should be hunky-dory, right? Well, Sid makes it weird. His old crew are excitedly saying that the rocket is gonna save Gaia, but the autopilot is busted, so they just need to repair that first. And crazy old Sid is like, forget autopilot, I'll pilot it. The dude is so desperate to get into space, he is willing to ride the rocket straight into a damn meteor. Cloud tries to talk him out of this batshit insane idea, but Sid wants to hear none of it. Yeah, the Materia's precious, yada yada, but space, my dude? Well, they don't have long to argue about it because Palmer, you remember him, don't you? Pops up on the monitors and says the autopilot was repaired, so he just went ahead and launched it. Guy's as nutty as Sid. They try to terminate the launch sequence, but it's a no-go. They're blasted off into space, headed straight for the meteor. Sid reveals that he isn't that batty, and that there's escape pods, but as they're headed for it, an oxygen tank explodes, and some debris crushes Sid's leg. Cloud and the third party member try to free him, but the debris is too heavy. Sid tells them just go, but Cloud refuses to leave without him. Thankfully, there is one more completely nutty Batso person on the rocket, Shara, who was a part of the original failed launch of the rocket that is currently blasting through space towards Meteor. Sid blamed her for the launch failing because she was being overly picky about one of the oxygen tanks, the one that just exploded. Bet he's feeling like a bit of a Quack now. With her help, they remove the debris and everyone escapes together in the pod. The rocket impacts Meteor and breaks a chunk off of it, but it's still careening for Gaia. The group realized they didn't really have any additional steps beyond foil Shinra, so they pay another visit to Bugenhagen for some ideas. This leads them to bring Bugenhagen to the city of the ancients. He is able to interpret the will of the ancients and tells them that the power of the ultimate white materia, Holy, can combat Meteor. I don't know how he knows it's the white materia, but Cloud says, well, we're all boned because Eris had the white materia and it fell off the altar when she died. With a key from a silly fetch quest and the magic of being the knowledgeable old man in the plot, Bugenhagen activates a music box which replays the events of Eris' death, showing that the materia was glowing green when it fell off the altar. This means that Eris' prayer to the planet was heeded and Holy was activated. The only reason it's not currently stopping Meteor is because something is holding it back. And who else could that be but Sephiroth? Well, now they have another problem. The North Crater has a big old barrier around it, so they can't get to Sephiroth. Kate Shi tells Cloud that Shinra moved the huge cannon from Junon to Midgar because they plan to use the cannon to destroy Sephiroth's barrier. But they have a little problem in the meantime. A weapon has popped up out of the sea and is headed for Midgar, but the cannon won't be ready to fire before the weapon gets there. After Barrett worries about Marlene's safety, Kate reveals that she's with Eris' mother somewhere outside of Midgar. But the fact that Barrett was only concerned for Midgar because Marlene might have been in danger annoys Kate, who starts giving it to Barrett about how many lives he's ruined. It's a much needed reckoning because Avalanche bombed 2 reactors, ruined a bunch of lives, and killed who knows how many others, but Kate is the first to make them face it. Since the cannon might not be ready in time, the group race to fight Weapon. But partway through their fight, the weapon starts to ignore them and begins to attack Midgar instead. The cannon shoots through the weapon and manages to hit and destroy Sephiroth's barrier while it's at it. But the weapon got some shots of its own off before it was killed, and one of those shots hits the president's office where Rufus is. Before the party can fly off to fight Sephiroth, Kate tells them that Hojo has betrayed Shinra by increasing the output of the Maka reactors and locking down the controls. They have to get to the mainframe to stop the reactors from blowing. They parachute into Midgar, confront Hojo, and learn that thing I covered earlier about him being Sephi's daddy. With Midgar saved, again, the party regroup on Highwind. Meteor has about 7 days before it'll arrive. The plan is to defeat Sephiroth, and hopefully by doing so, they'll release Holy and it'll stop Meteor. Cloud asks everyone why they're fighting. Nice as it is to claim that they're all doing it to save the planet, he thinks everyone has a deeper reason. For him, it's a personal feud. For Barrett, it's Marlene. He encourages everyone to leave the ship, find their own reasons to fight, and then, if they want to, come back for the final confrontation. Tifa is the only one to stay behind, and don't worry, Cloud lost no density by rediscovering himself. He asks Tifa what she's going to do. You know, the woman who lost her hometown at the same time as him, and then lost her new home when Shinra dropped Sector 7 on it? Cloud's like, oh, yeah, you're right. We both have nowhere to go and nowhere to return to. Whoops! Under the high wind, Cloud and Tifa have a rare moment to themselves. well, outside of that time in Cloud's subconsciousness. They wonder how many of their friends will return, and Tifa tells Cloud that as long as she has him at her side, she's totally up to try and duo the final boss. Then she confides that while they were in the live stream, even though there were screams of anguish all around her, she truly believes she could hear Cloud calling her name, but she figures that he probably doesn't remember it. Cloud says he does remember though, and he thought he heard her voice calling for him too. They spend the night together underneath the high wind, and it's either as sexy as that sounds or not as sexy as it sounds. I'm skimming, but trust me, it's weirdly ambiguous. It's not really plot relevant so much as character relevant, and seeing how I don't want to be stabbed to death with pitchforks, we'll be moving on. While Tifa is talking to Cloud about how lonely the airship feels with just the two of them, it starts to move. They head to the deck and find that every single person came back, from their friends to the rest of the crew. They descend into the North Crater and encounter another form of Jenova. After defeating Jenova, the platform they're standing on gives way and they fall into the crater. Below, they see the power of Holy being restrained. Sephiroth appears, plays with the party like they're a bunch of fleshy yo-yos, and then turns into this thing. After his Cthulhu wedding cake form, he swaps again and they defeat safer, more wings are better, Sephiroth. With Sephiroth defeated, nothing should be holding Holy back. Now the rest is up to the planet, so pack up, let's go home proud, and hope that the planet doesn't want us all to get squished like waffles. As they're leaving, there's a flash of light and static. Cloud says that he can feel Sephiroth is still alive. He collapses to his knees, splitting into two. Thought safer, more wings are better Sephiroth was his final form? No. Meet shirtless Sephiroth. Sephiroth figured, heck it, why not try and dominate Cloud's mind again, for old time's sake? But Sephi, you silly goose, this is Cloud, not Zack Cloud. He one-shots Sephiroth, who smirks at him and then dissipates into streams of red and white light. Some shiny green energy surrounds Cloud and he's like, oh, hey, I've seen this stuff before. It's the live stream. He sees a hand reaching out to him from the live stream and he reaches toward it. Before he can grab the hand, he's back to reality, looking up at Tifa, who's reaching out for him as the crater collapses all around them. The ground below Tifa gives way, and adrenaline is still one hell of a drug, because Cloud is able to leap up, catch her, grab a ledge, and do a one-arm pull-up. Maybe I'm just too twiggy to accurately picture that level of strength, but damn. Cloud says he believes he can meet her in the Promised Land. Tifa smiles, hugs him closer, and says yes. Let's go meet her. The party then come to a realization. There's no way they're going to be able to climb all the way out of the crater before it collapses on them. Sid says, come on, Lady Luck, don't fail me now. The high wind plummets nose first into the crater, showing the bikini babe printed on the outside of the ship. Lady Luck, get it? Thankfully, Holy doesn't appear to be harmful to humans like the live stream is, because they climb aboard the high wind and then they get launched out of the crater, riding the Holy Wave. Meteor decided that 7 days is bogus. It's arriving like right now. It gets very close to Midgar. Twisters begin to destroy the city. Holy cuts through, creating a net between Meteor and Gaia, but it is only able to hold Meteor back. Tendrils of livestream juice burst out of the planet and join with Holy. Everybody watching is blinded by a bright light, and we see a shot of Eris, which is reminiscent of the opening video. I felt like Cloud circa the Whirlwind Maze while writing this script. When I started it, I was all cocky and like, it's not that complicated actually, but then I started doing research on like just what Jenova is capable of, and I was like, Soldier? When did I enter Soldier? How did I join Soldier? While the surface level of the plot is completely understandable with just the game, if you go a little deeper, there's just so much ambiguity and honestly just full-on gaps that make coming to a conclusion about what's actually happening kind of impossible. Some of the open questions have been debated for years, like, is Jenova completely inert and her headless body is just like a meat puppet being used by Sephiroth? Or is she in control of him? Or maybe it's a symbiotic relationship? Outside of like pride, there's really no reason why Jenova would want to work against him. She's chill with the planet being destroyed after all. I wanted this video out sooner, but I didn't have a Tifa to pull me out of the Jenova rabbit hole. If you're interested in more, consider checking this video out and subscribing. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.